There's good. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Della Rocca. I'm the co-founder of Execution Labs. That's an early-stage game investor based out of Canada, although we do investments pretty much everywhere. We've been doing this for about three and a half years or so. We've seen hundreds of pitches from developers. We've done about 25 investments to date. Probably our most popular or well-known is a studio called Outer Minds, which is the studio out of Montreal that did the PewDiePie game, PewDiePie Legend of the Brofist. So that was one of our studios. So I suppose why I'm saying that is because we've seen a lot of stuff. We've seen a lot of stuff from developers in their attempts to be more entrepreneurial, their attempts to build companies, their attempts to be successful in the marketplace. And so this is kind of a collection of some of the learnings that we've had in that journey. Now, the first thing I want to do is kind of put out a caveat in the sense that it's okay to be a starving artist, meaning that's a valid path to take. That in terms of the tips that I'm going to give, the lessons, the things that I'm going to share, it's really in the context of trying to build a business, trying to create games in a context of commercial intent. And that may not be what everyone is after. And just making games for the sake of making games because you want to express yourself or be artistic, that's cool too. And that's fine. I'm not going to give you funding. I'll still play your game and I'm sure I'll love it, but meaning I'm not presenting this as kind of a binary, and it's fine for you to be a quote unquote starving artist. I'm going to present this in the context of mistakes, and some of the sort of catastrophes that we've seen. Also, every slide is going to be a meme that I pulled off of the internet, so we'll have fun with that. I'm terrible at making slides. Anyway, so this is kind of the approach we'll take. So the first thing is nobody cares about your commercial success, right? Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody's there to help you ensure that you're going to succeed commercially. And I think it's kind of the inverse of the coin that we're all accustomed to, which is a very vibrant community that supports each other, that really shares and collaborates and is quite helpful. But the reality is success is the exception, right? Success is the thing that happens rarely. And despite how much we give each other high fives and hugs and cheer each other on, we're not the ones that are ensuring each other's commercial success in the marketplace. And we see it too often that studios that connect well within the community and are here on stage or in the showcase or get IGF nominations and kind of feel the love, that love does not necessarily turn into commercial success. And this notion of vanity metrics is a very dangerous thing. And we probably see that sort of the manifestation of that is the worst at something like a PAX, where a developer will go, they'll get a booth, whether it's in the Indie Mega booth or on their own, and the booth will be busy the whole time, and people are cheering, and it's a great showing, and they come back really bolstered and motivated, and then their game will sell zero, right? Because people cheering at your PAX booth doesn't equal sales; it equals cheering at your PAX booth. And so it's hard, or it's not hard, it's easy to kind of get caught up in these kind of vanity, what we call vanity metrics that don't actually equate to sales. So this is kind of one of the main things that we often see. No one cares. The next is we often get pitched problems, right? As investors, we want to invest in opportunities, but instead we get pitched problems. I mean, so many times we'll be in a meeting, a developer will reach out to us, hey, I'm Studio X, I've got this game, I'd like to come pitch to you. And we're pretty open, we'll take those meetings, we're happy to chat with folks. And they'll come in and they'll say, here's the game I'm working on, we're a studio of this many people, and we're running out of money, and the game is taking longer than we thought it would. and I need more polish, and I lost my programmer, and he went to get a job somewhere, and I got maybe 2 more months of cash, and I need 6 more months of development, and I didn't budget for marketing, and I have a PAX booth and I can't pay for it. Like, are you interested? Am I interested? Interested in what? And like, yeah, well, I need some cash. I got to go to PAX. And so they're not presenting the opportunity of this amazing game that they're working on and the potential that might be and so on. So I think probably 9 out of the 10 pitches that we get are these kind of framed as a problem, that someone realized they had this problem of not enough cash and they wanted to go find someone to fix this problem they had, rather than I have this amazing opportunity and I better go find the partners that want to support that opportunity and get behind it. And while some of that is just sort of a mindset shift and like, okay, I'll go into this meeting and though I'm short on cash, I'm still going to pitch it as an opportunity. Oh, by the way, I'm running low on my budget. I mean, obviously that'll come out because we're going to, do due diligence and look at your budgets and whatnot. But just that sort of reframing is an interesting one. And so don't pitch your problems. Another one is lack of market research. Very, very few developers do any form of competitive analysis. And while I am sympathetic that we don't want to, be sort of making games based on spreadsheets and whatnot, if you're trying to build a game with commercial intent, you have to get a sense of what is the actual commercial potential of this game. What other games are kind of like mine, whether in terms of gameplay style or platform or thematic. What did they do? How did they do? What's the sort of range of possibility? I mean, in some senses, it's all just sort of guessing, but at least you're going through the exercise of kind of understanding and making an educated guess rather than saying, I'm just going to make it and hope that it sells, and not get a sort of true sense of what the potential is. And so a classic example here is couch co-op games. Couch co-op games, local multiplayer games, fun games. Everyone cheers when we see them being played at PAX and so on. So, they're fun games to play. But generally speaking, if you look at other couch co-op games, they sell terribly, right? It sort of implies that I've got friends to play with, and they're at my house on my sofa, and I have 4 controllers or whatever. And so despite the fact that they show well at PAX and they are fun to watch when the Twitchers play them and so on, generally speaking, they don't sell well. And if you did your market research, you would see that your chances of succeeding would be very, very poor. When you're doing competitive analysis, it's important to look at the losers, right? It's not as instructive to say, well, I'm making a MOBA, so League of Legends, that makes about $1 billion a year. So I maybe have a chance of making $1 billion a year, right? You have to look at the full range of, in this case, MOBAs, and understand their sales potential and what they did or didn't do, but also look at them from a design point of view, implementation point of view. How far off is your game from the ones that did poorly? What can you learn from the losers or the failures is an important element, and not to sort of get stuck in survivorship bias. But very few developers do market research or competitive analysis. That sort of leads to the next point, which is marketing. Most developers are really bad at this, and their first mistake is not appreciating marketing for what it is, right? Most people think of marketing as advertising/PR. And advertising/PR is only one piece of marketing. Anyone who may have gone to university and taken a marketing course would know that there's 4 Ps of marketing, of which promotion, meaning advertising, PR, and so on, is only one of them. The first P of marketing is product, right? Understanding what is the product you're building and thinking of the thing that you're building as a product that has an audience and so on. So what it's product, it's price, right? So we can sort of think of price as business model. Well, is it free to play? Is it subscription based? Is it ad driven? Is it premium? What price should I price it at if it is premium? All this kind of stuff. So price is an important piece of marketing. Place is an important, or one of the P's. I mean, in our context, P or place would be more the distribution platform rather than, on the street corner in a store or whatever. So it's price, product, place, and promotion. And so in that sense, if you're really thinking of marketing as it should be in this kind of holistic, more encompassing sense, it's unavoidable that marketing is your job as an indie game developer, right? You cannot separate marketing from what it means to be a game developer, because you're thinking about price, you're thinking about the product, you're thinking about where you're going to distribute it, and sure, promotion is part of that. So you can't just dismiss it and say, well, I'm a developer, I don't need to worry about marketing, because fundamentally marketing is about deciding what is even the product you're building, let alone where you're going to distribute the price and so on. All right, the next one is comfort, right? Too many developers, they don't like to be uncomfortable. And you're all here in the room at the Indie Game Summit, so you might be sort of leaning more so on the I'm open, I share my stuff, I'll be at the IGF and booth and so on. But many developers out there, they're afraid. Right? They're uncomfortable talking about their game. They're uncomfortable showing their game or demoing their game. And if you're comfortable, you're too late. Right? You need to be showing and talking about and having your game played by gamers as early on as possible. Certainly at Execution Labs, it's one of the things that we promote and really push our teams to do. Right? Everyone wants to delay. It's not ready. It's too many bugs. It's not polished enough. And it's like, doesn't matter, do it, push it. And we were forcing teams every week to do playtests, having a handful of gamers off the street come in, play the game, give feedback. And I mean, it's a hassle, right? It's actually, you have to run playtests. It's work that needs to be done. But it's painful. It's painful to watch players not understand what they're supposed to do and not get the UI and not grok the missions and tell you this is kind of not fun, right? They're essentially telling you your baby is ugly, and no one likes to hear that their baby is ugly. But I mean, you got to know. If your baby's ugly, you want to know as early as possible. Anyways, so you have to sort of embrace the discomfort. And get out there as early as possible, get that feedback, and don't take it personally, right? Take it as an opportunity to improve what you're working on. And I cannot express enough how important it is for actual players, not always your best friend or your fellow developers to play. That's an important part of it, but really it's gamers, it's actual potential customers playing the game. Somewhat related to that, on the business development side, you're usually always too late. Everyone is too late. You need to be developing the relationships with potential publishers, investors, partners, platforms early. That it's kind of freaky to the extent to which people will leave the dungeon and go out because tomorrow they're running out of money. And they have to find a deal quick or get some work for hire or get an investor. And you're doomed. You're doomed if you wait till the last minute. You really have to be building those relationships early on. Most publishing deals or even investments take months to close. Even if you go in and you pitch and you blow their socks off and everyone's like, this is amazing, we want in, let's do a deal. Even after that sort of positive verbal commitment, potentially can still take 3 to 6 months just to sort of finalize the paperwork and close a deal. And if you were running out of money next month and you need 6 months to close the deal, you're screwed despite all the positive feedback. So you need to be building those relationships. You need to be coming out to the shows. You need to be, doing those meetings, even when you're not in sort of imminent danger or desperation. And we can smell it. We can smell the desperation, and it doesn't smell good. So publishers, they can smell that. So you got to be doing that early on. Related to that is the budgeting. This is my favorite one, by the way. Is the budgeting, right? You need to be budgeting for those 6 months, right? If you know you need a publishing deal, and that's going to take 6 months to close, you have to make sure that you're not running out of money in there. Or budgeting for marketing. budgeting to go to PAX or Gamescom, or they do the Indie Arena booth, whatever. Developers tend to budget for production and production only. And that's a big problem because as developers, as we said before, you're responsible for more than just the production. Even with mobile games, Sebastian before was talking about soft launch. I mean, he didn't go into the budgeting side of things, but you have to budget for that. You have to budget for the 3 to 6 months that it takes to soft launch a mobile game. We've seen so many developers who only plan to get to soft launch, then do the soft launch thinking magically that all kinds of money are going to come in because the game's out in the marketplace in the Philippines or whatever, but then realize they're lucky if they get $10 a day during this testing phase. And they didn't budget for 3 more months of iteration. So all kinds of budgeting errors. It just happens all the time. And I think the first step is understanding that you're not just budgeting for the core production of the game, right? You have to think in this more holistic, longer sense. Whether it's soft launch, even early access, right? For those doing premium games, Steam games, early access is not a viable source of production funding. It happens in rare exceptions, where a game does extremely well and then you get $1 million and great, we can make the rest of the game. But that is extremely rare. And so the more common thing is being in early access takes you 20% more time and budget to be there. Because you have to respond to the feedback, you have to engage the community, you have to address the bugs that they bring up that you didn't find, or new design ideas that the community is bringing back to you. And it takes time and energy to service the community and leverage the fact that you're in, or take advantage of the fact that you're in early access. But that's budget, that's time. And so if you're budgeting just to get to early access, you're screwed again. You need to be able to, budget past early access launch. So it's extremely rare that you'll actually get money or sufficient money during the early access phase, and it takes more time and budget while you're actually there. So budgeting is another kind of key one that time and again it sort of screws developers. And I'm sure you've either done this or seen it where a developer will release their game early or prematurely because they have no more budget. They didn't budget accordingly, and that's recipe for disaster. Contracts will kill you, right? Contracts or messy contracts. We've walked away from really exciting opportunities that the contracts were just too messed up, right? Because they didn't get a lawyer to look at them properly. IP wasn't assigned, so it was messy. It was unclear who owned what. The incorporation documents were messed up, or you were the wrong kind of corporation to even receive funding. So there's all kinds of stuff around the contract side of things that can really hinder your success. Publishers too. Publishers will walk away if it's not clear, who they're doing business with and who owns it, and that everything's tidy from a contractor and assignment point of view, or that you haven't committed so much of your revenue in rev share deals because you didn't have the money to pay programmers and artists. You've promised them revenue shares. Well, what revenue share and who gets what and how are you slicing the pie? Publishers will walk away from that because they just don't want to deal with the mess, and they have so many other games to look at. Us as investors, we've walked away from those kinds of deals because we go in, we're all excited, and it's like, oh, this is like a can of worms. We just can't touch it. Just as a sort of a mental image, I think most people here have seen Indie Game the movie, right? And the sort of the drama around Fez. That's this slide, right? That in essence, the drama of that movie is because of bad contracts and messy contracts. So we wouldn't have that movie if he had done his contracts properly. So it seems like a detail, and it certainly is probably the most boring element of everything sort of covered here. But despite that, they can be the sort of the poison pill that screws you in the end because you didn't give it enough attention. Another one is roadmap. Yeah. So we like this term, or maybe another term is vision, right? We like to invest in studios that have a roadmap or have a vision. And in part, it's the recognition that the first game you do is not necessarily going to be the home run, the big hit. That in fact, the first game is the stepping stone to create the second game, which is the stepping stone to create the third game. And as a studio, you're building momentum along the way. You're building momentum in terms of brand recognition. You're building momentum in terms of team skills and efficiency. You're building momentum in terms of tools and techniques. You're building momentum in terms of reputation within the industry amongst investors and publishers. But that requires a roadmap. It requires a vision. When we do due diligence or we're interviewing teams, one of the trick questions we have is, what does your third game look like? Or what is your third game? And if they can't answer that question, we know that they're not thinking long term, that they don't have a roadmap or they don't have a vision because they're too focused on the game they're working on right now. But if you're only focused on the game you're working on right now, then how can you ensure that what you're doing now helps you do the next game that helps you do the third game and fourth game and so on? I'll use an example of one of the studios that we invested in called Kitfox. Kitfox Games is a Canadian studio led by Tanya Short, who came from the AAA side of the industry and then put an awesome team together. And she's very interested in a couple of things. One is procedural generation, world generation, and narrative, interactive narrative and advanced sort of a narrative stuff. So they kind of built their studio around the notion of they're going to work on games that really leverage procedural generation and interactive narrative. Although I think they use a cooler term. But anyway, so we'll just go with that. And so the first game they did, Shattered Planet, was a relatively small scope game. It was mobile, and it was like a sci-fi game, and you're on the planet, and every time it's like a roguelike. Every time you die, the planet resets, and you discover new things. And they have this technology to build the planet's surface, and like as you discovered stuff, it created little snippets of story. And anyways, whatever. The game basically broke even. But the game was just the stepping stone to do the second game, which was Moon Hunters. Last year, Moon Hunters was named as one of the most anticipated games of 2016. Launched on Steam, and then it's going to console. And it's also sort of roguelike procedural generation, completely different setting. It's like Mesopotamian. It's pixel art and 4-player. So if you look at it, it looks like a completely different game. But it's leveraging the similar techniques, design skills, tools, all the stuff they built for Shattered Planet enabled them to do the second game, Moon Hunters. And I can't tell you what the third game is, but the third game is leveraging all those tools, techniques, design philosophies, and lessons they learned on doing the first two games. Now, if they sat down and said, let's just make the third game, they couldn't. It would take too much time, too much budget. They'd make too many errors, but the fact that they sort of having this roadmap allows them to make each subsequent game in that vision more rapidly, more efficiently. And then they're building a fan base that's expecting that kind of game from them. They're building a reputation. They get invited to do speaks at GDC about procedural generation, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't have that vision, it's hard for you to kind of build that momentum. Right, if you're just going from one bit of tech to one platform to a different style of game, just sort of randomly, it's hard to build that momentum. All right, then lastly, and I think this is key, is if you're just not building something that anyone wants. And again, remember my caveat at the beginning, which was, if you want to be a starving artist, that's valid and fine. If you just want to make games because you want it as your canvas to express yourself, that's powerful and amazing. Go do that. But don't necessarily expect anyone to give you money for it. Right? We invest in studios. We invest in projects that we believe have breakthrough potential, that have that are cool and interesting and fun and innovative, but that also we believe there's a market for it. And if you're not thinking in that way, and you're kind of doing the old school, I just build the game that I want to play, great, do that, but don't expect anyone to necessarily fund it or back it. So, I think this is part of the identity challenge that some of us have in terms of struggling between being an entrepreneur and a starving artist, a starving artist and a sellout. Right, I'm just out to make money. I'm a sellout. I think there is a healthy in-between identity, which is being an indie entrepreneur, which is doing something cool, something interesting, but doing so in a commercial context, recognizing there is an audience and embracing all of these elements. Hopefully then, you kind of don't do some of these gaffes and mix-ups and focus on these elements, and the money will come raining. Thank you very much. I think we have, are we out of time? I can do a question or two if there's anyone who wants to challenge something I've said. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you reiterate on what you do when you invest in, like you do damage control, you find a developer that you actually believe in?
Yep.
And maybe he's already launched the game. I don't know if you've launched, if you've invested in people that already launched. But what do you do, like with damage control? Do you do the marketing for them, or? So
the question for those who couldn't hear is, when we invest, how do we help with damage control if they've launched or not launched? Yeah, I mean, we try to not deal with damage control. Like, we won't invest if we believe there's damage control. I mean, so as an investor, we come in early stage. So normally we're pre-revenue and also pre-release. So we provide funding then that you as a company can use to produce your game. And then as early stage investors, we also like to be very hands-on. So we'll help with strategy and we'll also help coaching a bit on the user testing, and we'll help do introductions to key partners and publishers and whatnot. So hopefully there's enough time there to avoid the need to do damage control. And really we're investing in you as a studio because we believe you have that vision and long-term potential, and looking at the game you're working on right now as just one sort of stepping stone to this longer-term roadmap. Yeah, so it's a bit of a strange question. I mean, if you're in this desperate situation and you're kind of running out of money and you like, it's unlikely we would invest in you.
All right, reframe the question. What would be your advice, if you had one advice, to do damage control?
Well, it depends on the damage.
Like, let's say you already launched the game and start getting enough traction. Is it normally, what's the biggest problem there? Is it PR, or is it?
Yeah. I mean, so again, the question is, so I'm guessing you launched a game and it's not doing too well, and what can you do to kind of recover? In some cases, is you don't recover, right? You cut and move on. I mean, you have to accept sunk costs, and if the game is awesome and getting great reviews, just not enough people know about it, then sure, maybe it's a promotion, it's a PR, challenge. If the game is not getting good reviews and nobody cares, and it's just kind of, it's your first effort and it just didn't go so well, then just move on. Like, just it's like check number one. You got your first game out. You're a pro developer now. Like, move on to the next thing. So, I mean, without getting into more depth, it's hard really to say what the best course of action is. All right, everyone, I think that's all the time. Thank you so much.